Welcome to the Military Schooler podcast, where we bring you inside military schools and offer insights on this unique education. This is the first in our alumni series, where we speak with military school alumni about their experiences at school and how this has helped shape them as adults. This is also a special episode as we are privileged to have as our host Colonel Ray Rottman, the Executive Director of the Association of Military Colleges and Schools of the United States. He will be speaking with Major James Bithorn, a graduate of a military high school and 2 military colleges.
There are some certain lessons that I got as a 16-year-old, as a cadet team leader, that I now apply as a major in the Army with 15 years. Being there out early in front of your people, having some sort of guidance and direction. Don't just tell them what to do, show them what to do, teach, educate. And these were, lessons that I learned 16 years old in the first few months of figuring out how to get people from point A to B, very menial, small tasks, but it was really invaluable for me.
My name is Ray Rottman, and after serving 30 years in the United States Air Force, for the past 5 years, I've had the honor of serving as the Executive Director of the Association of Military Colleges and Schools of the United States. The association was founded in 1914 and currently consists of 40 military colleges and schools with a combined enrollment of over 19,000 students. The association's membership includes both boarding and day schools and is comprised of K through 8, college prep, 2-year junior military colleges, and 4-year senior military colleges and universities. The common thread between the association's diverse network of schools is that they all use the military education model. The military education model provides students with a unique environment with the structure, organization, and focus on character and leadership that helps these students understand, appreciate, and achieve their fullest potential. Contrary to Hollywood's depiction of military schools, they are not options of last resort for troubled teenagers. Today's military schools enroll some of the country's finest young men and women and provide them with a whole-person education, including challenging academic programs, excellent student-to-teacher ratios, diverse athletic and leadership opportunities, and most importantly, we incorporate character development throughout. The goal of today's military schools is to ensure our graduates have the skills and resilience needed to succeed in life. Today, it is my pleasure to be joined by an individual who has attended a military preparatory boarding school, a military junior college, and graduated from a senior military college. James Bithorn is a major in the United States Army. Of note, he is an Army Ranger. He is married to his wonderful wife, and they have 2 children. He is a gentleman of great integrity, and he coaches Little League sports, loves helping out wherever he can. And with that, James, I'd like to ask you a few questions. What went into your family's decision to enroll you in a military school?
Hey, thank you, sir. I appreciate the question, and I'm happy to be doing this today. So there was no single factor, I think, that guided my family and I to enrolling in a military high school. Where I grew up in New York was a moderately successful high school, not exactly a premier magnet school, but not necessarily the worst school in the area. We were looking at options for private school halfway through my high school experience, and we were going to go the typical Catholic school route, and all indicators were that that's what we were going to do. I had also had it in my head, probably earlier than most kids do, freshman, sophomore year of high school, that to pay for college, I was going to enter military service in some way, shape, or form. I vividly remember a young Marine who used to ruck march, or really ruck run, through my town on Long Island where I grew up. And then if you're from New York, that's a really unique thing. Not a lot of people from Long Island join the military. And I was sort of fascinated by him. My interest kept growing. Due to the course of online research that my dad was doing, we came across a military high school in Pennsylvania. And my dad put the webpage in front of me, and I think my reaction is what surprised him. I think he put it in front of me almost jokingly, but I just, for some reason, had significant interest in it. And I wanted to look at more photos and wanted to keep going. We reached out to the school, and then within probably about 30 minutes of him reaching out to the school, I got a call from the high school football coach, who was very interested and very eager to get me onto his team and into the school, and which led to a visit there afterwards. And I think I personally fell in love with it. For one, being out of the city, two, seeing sort of the brotherhood that existed with the students there. It was a unique experience and something I was sort of craving, and I didn't even realize that that's what I wanted. And as I entered my first year in the school, we hadn't had it necessarily set in our minds that we would do another year, if I would graduate from it, or if I go back to a public school. But there was a sense of competitiveness, brotherhood, and drive that I got there that I just didn't get anywhere else. So that's sort of how we ended up there in the first place.
That is quite interesting. I've found in my job that a lot of times it's not the parents that bring the student or the potential student to the military school. It is the students that via the internet or social media read about the military schools, and they see the challenges and the opportunities that they afford. And they, in turn, bring their parents to the schools. Thank you for sharing that. I found it quite interesting. What were your first impressions of military school?
I automatically fell in love with it. So I was brought in for the visit. You know, you're looking at an environment very different from the city where I grew up. Beautiful rolling hills, vegetation, things along those lines that I was just not familiar with. And then it was the people that I met that made me want to stay there. It was the openness and willingness to bring me into the sort of pre-existing family. And I thought that was amazing. And then I peeled a layer back behind the brotherhood and the friendship. And then there was the competitive nature of things there, the opportunities it was afforded. And next thing I know, I'm joining the drill team. I'm joining the Raider team. I'm doing the color guard, all these things I'd never shown interest in doing before in my life. But they were just unique things. I was on the debate team, a declamation team, and there was just so much to do that was so unique there that I found it absolutely fantastic and fascinating in the same regard.
That's wonderful. A lot of parents and some students are concerned about that transition that they will experience. Can you tell the audience a little bit about what you experienced, the difference between living at home and what you found when you first arrived at the military school and began to live on campus?
Sure. So living at home, obviously you wake up in the morning, you know, mom and dad have breakfast there for you. The house is always fully stocked with whatever your personal hygiene stuff is. And there's a sense of self-reliance at an early age at home that you don't get compared to a military school. And I think that was the difference. And you sort of had to learn how to do the very basics to take care of yourself, which isn't really common in today's youth, at least in my opinion. I have to make sure that I actually do my own laundry. I have to actually make sure that I'm any of the allowance that you get, that I actually save it if there's a purchase that I'd like to make. And I think that really was what the transition was learning a little bit more self-reliance. It wasn't very difficult to deal with because the school offered a great safety net and support system, and that brotherhood, the friends that I made there that I keep referring to, that made it worthwhile. And a lot of those kids that I went to school with had been first-year military school kids at some point in time, whether it was that year with me or if it was a couple years prior or whatever it was. So it wasn't by any means a difficult transition, but it was definitely a transition where I had to learn a little bit more about myself. And what I noticed when I came home in the summer or during the holidays, I looked around my friends from public high school, and it was no knock against them, but I thought there was just a little difference in maturity. And I think that maturity I gained was because of the military high school experience.
Wonderful. So you mentioned self-reliance and that benefit. Can you think of some other life skills that you learned from your time at military schools and how they may have benefited you?
Well, first off, academic study. I wasn't a poor student in public high school, but I wasn't the best either. The use of study hall the way you would in a collegiate environment in military high school was really useful for me. The thing about military high school, you could take the underlying purpose of it is to prepare young men and women for success in life and to be outstanding citizens. And that's what that school did for me. Better study habits, learn how to socially interact like an adult. That was key. And some of these lessons I still use for my children, whether it's dinner table manners, whether it's how to act during a ball or some sort of high-end social engagement, how to shake somebody's hand, look them in the eye, how to properly escort your date when you're in high school, like a young man instead of an overeager, teenager. And these are all the things that were actually lessons that I was taught. Before we went to a military ball, there was etiquette taught to you. Oh, how do you tie a bow tie? This is how you tie a bow tie. And I find that even in my adult years, I have friends who don't have that experience. And in turn, they don't know how to teach that to their children either. So I think I've been given a pretty valuable gift, and I'm able to take those lessons and give them to my children too. So it sort of expands on itself as years go on.
How did your time at military prep school prepare you for your college experience? And was there any time when you got to college that you felt maybe I'm missing something?
I definitely had a head start compared to my peers. I mean, it's just the J1 of the military college experience, how to stand in a formation, how to march, how to render a salute, all those basic military courtesies. So that was the easy first step in the door, which kept my mind a little bit more clear, I think, than others. And I wasn't having to learn things for the first time. The military college I went to, the first year during the summer when you come in, they have a freshman induction portion, and it's waking you up at 5 a.m, doing PT all day long, long rough marches up and down mountains, stuff like that. And I did not feel out of my element doing that. I felt comfortable, and I felt like the lessons I had learned were now building upon themselves in military college. And it just made things a bit easier.
I'm going to ask you to go back in time briefly for me. Some parents and prospective students are concerned about what it's going to be like, what that culture shock is when they first arrive. Can you describe your first few days of military school and what they felt like to you personally?
Sure. So the first couple of days, I actually came to the military high school during football camp. So it was fortunate. I had a little bit of a slow start into things. It was before the academic year began. So I got to learn and grow with the football players and sort of build friendships before the rigor of the academic year began. But unlike anything else, it's the first time I was away from home. So yes, there's a sense of homesickness that you do have, which is normal. It's normal for any kid as they go to college. But there was no real culture shock. I never felt that at all. I was just too interested with all these different types of kids that were not New Yorkers who had different life experiences that I could talk to and hang out with and have these cool friendships. So there was no real culture shock. I had to learn to be a little bit more disciplined academically. And the reason that I had to learn to be a little bit more disciplined academically is because I was interested in the rewards that were offered in the school. So if you were a first honor, 95 or 90 GPA, I can't remember what it was. There was less time you sat in the room during study hall, and you could have those 30 minutes in your personal room and do study hall, things like that. So I think that's a little bit more of a culture shock than anything else, but it was the right type of culture shock and something I've carried with me today through an undergraduate and 2 master's degrees.
Do you remember anything that first semester or that first few weeks that was fairly difficult for you to adjust and to embrace that new environment where you found yourself?
Well, I'd say the first fairly difficult point was going to an all-male environment 24 hours a day, especially when you're a young man going through, puberty or whatever else it is that you experience as a teenager. I think that was the oddity, I think. The uniqueness about the high school I went to was that they didn't shy away from that subject. You were taught how to responsibly, like a grown man, interact with women, which was, I think, is really invaluable for today's youth, particularly with what you see out there on social media, what you see on TV, etc. How to treat women with dignity and respect. So that was probably the oddest part of it. But there always seemed to me that for each unique aspect of military high school culture, there's always a teaching point associated with it or a safety net to not become overly distracted behind what the purpose of the school was. And that was institutionalized in the organization. That somebody had actually thought through what does a student experience while they're here and how do we assist them through the process? How do we continue to develop this young man, if that makes any sense?
It does. The next couple of questions are going to be talking about leadership. Obviously, the military colleges and schools focus on developing leadership skills. Can you briefly describe what your first leadership position was at a military school?
Sure. It was a cadet team leader. So in charge of 3 people in a squad. I think I was an alpha team leader. And I was offered that leadership position probably earlier than cadets normally would. I don't know if it was just the indicators of capability or my football coach liked me. I don't know. But that was my first real touch point with military-styled leadership. And frankly, I wasn't too good at it at first because I didn't know really what to do. But there are some certain lessons that I got as a 16-year-old, as a cadet team leader, that I now apply as a major in the Army with 15 years. Being there out early in front of your people, having some sort of guidance and direction. Don't just tell them what to do, show them what to do, teach, educate. And these were, lessons that I learned 16 years old in the first few months of figuring out how to get people from point A to B, very menial, small tasks, but it was really invaluable for me.
Well, thank you for that. Given your time in the 3 military schools and colleges that you attended, what was your most challenging leadership position, and how did you get through that challenge?
The most challenging leadership position I had was probably at the senior military college I went to. As your second year there, you're afforded the opportunity to be what they call cadet cadre. So cadre for freshmen, their first year attending the college. And as corporal cadre, which is what I was, you are pushing yourself very, very much so in different ways than you ever had to before in your life. A couple of examples are that when the freshmen come in for their introduction to military college experience, the challenge week that we put them through, you're there a week prior. So for one, you're taking extra time away from your summer block leave. And then you're learning the discipline to treat cadets with dignity and respect while pushing them to the edge of their capabilities to, in a small sense, break them down and then build them back up again. And that's not a common lesson that a 19-year-old is taught. You know, it teaches you a lot about leadership. The other part of that was, it was the first time that I was waking up at 4:35 in the morning, making sure that I had the energy and had done the necessary preparation for the day to then lead these cadets and leave the impression upon them that I was the standard that they wanted to be one day. And that experience is absolutely something that I've taken forward with me since then.
You sound like a very positive and upbeat person just by your nature. What is your favorite memory of being at a military school or college as a cadet?
I'd probably say my favorite memory, I'd have to go back to military college on this one. I was afforded a very unique opportunity to be on a mountain rescue team. This mountain rescue team, to be on it, there is a selection process that took you 2 years to finally be recognized as a member of the team. A lot of these skills that I was taught there got me through Ranger School however many years later, particularly as I'm sitting in the mountains of Dahlonega and, you know, climbing rock walls and being tested on knots and things of the sort. But I met my wife in college and on this mountain rescue team for our military ball. We would open up the ceremony, telling inverted in front of the American flag to the theme of the A-Team opening song. And you would walk out after completing the rappel. Your date would put on your jacket for you, and then you have the opening dance of the night. And that is probably the coolest experience I had in any three of the schools I attended.
That's awesome. I'd like to hear your wife's perspective on that sometime. I'm sure she remembers it quite vividly. Our military schools like to have relationship as part of the education. We try to have small classrooms and good ratios between students and teachers. And we also have our faculty members and staff members who really get to know those students. Can you tell us a little bit about how important the faculty was to you, or maybe a staff member was to you in your time in military school?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with my football coach in the military high school I went to, who I correspond with as often as a week ago. So he was not just our football coach, he was also a history teacher, and he was the building officer, so the TAC officer for the building we lived in. He had a significant influence on how I lead and negotiate obstacles in life. And he would talk about these things at an early age. And you didn't really understand sometimes what he was teaching us, but the lessons he was providing, how to stay steadfast in the face of adversity, maintain your character, maintain your presence, it directly translated some of the toughest things I've dealt with in life. And he continues to keep in touch with us after that experience, whether it's in group texts, group emails. And it's funny, he still refers to us as son, you know. So we had this very unique sort of relationship that I wouldn't have gotten anywhere out of any faculty member in a public high school system or otherwise.
Excellent. Given those relationships with faculty and staff, can you give us some idea of how that relates to your life now? How you are using those relationships? I mean, the example of your football coach is a great one, but are there any others that come to mind? Things that people invested in you and that you are investing in others now?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of that was the ability to lift me back up after some failure. So I went through academically a rough spot in my time in a military college. I was just taking on too many courses. I was trying to do too many things. There was a point in time where I was in jeopardy of losing my ROTC scholarship and rapidly get something back in place. And there was one member of the ROTC department who, again, I still keep in touch with years later. Instead of the negative approach that was commonly taken when you're put in that position, spent some time with me, set up tutoring, asked me, what are you having difficulties with? Why don't we try this approach? Stop trying to power through this course, try through this course. And he invested special interest in me instead of allowing me to just sink or swim, which it allows you into a leadership attribute that I use today, that gentle failure is okay, and you don't learn without failure. That's the responsibility of leaders, is to sometimes allow their subordinates to gently fail, provide that safety net for them, have them learn, and then grow from it. And then in turn, those subordinates that you develop through leadership, apply that to individuals that they will lead later down the road.
You have mentioned that you played football in high school. How did sports in general fit into your military preparatory school life or military college life?
So I never went a season without playing sports up until I was 18 years old. The football team that I was on was very unique in the military high school I went to. They had a terribly a historic losing record. Actually, I was the catalyst. I was clearly not. But when I got to that team, my junior and then my senior year, we turned the ship around to a winning record, which is something I'm proud of to this day. And it was just an awesome experience, because there was a closeness and a brotherhood you got in that football team because you lived together that you didn't have anywhere else, really. It was absolutely fantastic. From that, I think my desire to coach for the first time really started to manifest itself. So my football coach would do a unique thing for his seniors, particularly the football captains, and we would be able to help coach JV games. These were off games from us, which we've already played our games. And I suddenly found myself really, really liking that. And that translated to me coaching football with my son, however many years later, here in Georgia, Alabama, Kansas, all the different places that we've been. And that's one of those things that I'm probably proud of most. And it really also brought a closeness between my son and I that is absolutely invaluable to our relationship.
You have spoken earlier about the importance of having the opportunity to fail. Can you describe any time in your military school or military college where you did fail and how that played itself out?
Sure, absolutely. I guess I had demonstrated leadership early on during my first year in military high school. I was rapidly promoted, and I blew curfew purposely a couple of times, and one of these times I was caught. And when this happens, you're put on like extra duty, and then you lose your rank, and then you may not gain your rank back. And I was really devastated because I had people who had placed trust in me, and I very purposely was, interested in hanging out, blowing off curfew. Quite frankly, it was girls at church that I was more interested in talking to instead of getting back to campus at the right time, and then sort of sneaking my way back on. So I lost my rank, and I thought that was it. That's all over. I blew that opportunity. And it wasn't common to have your rank reinstated, but mine was. And I was promoted to a fairly, in the cadet corps ranking system at the end of the year, to a high ranking position, which again, didn't expect to have happen. And the president of the school, he pulled me aside and articulated to me why that was the case. And he told me it was how I handled myself in failure, and how I continued to lead, that allowed me to pick myself back up and move forward. So that was an important lesson to me, that you can fail, but staying the course will still lead to the outcomes you desire.
James, what advice would you give to a parent who is considering potentially exploring military preparatory schools or colleges?
Give it a chance. Give it a chance because it is something unique, and it will build upon itself, and it will make you a better person later in life. It will offer a network of friends, a cohort of individuals who will also continue to be successful in life that just won't be afforded in the public school system. The lessons you learn there will build upon themselves. So just explore it, give it a chance, and explore the different person that you could in turn be if you were to give it a chance.
Great. Can you briefly give us an idea of how military schools impacted your life at large? I mean, here you are many years later, 2 master's degrees, performing great things for us in the United States Army. How much of what you do today relates back to your experience or your experiences at military schools and colleges?
All of it. It's all built upon itself. My ability to be successful in a junior military college was derived from the lessons I was taught in military high school. My ability to be successful in military college was derived from the 2 previous experiences I've had, and then some of my experience in the Army, particularly leadership, is really derived from all of those experiences. As you traverse life, whether it be in the business sector or whether it be in the military or whatever profession you so choose, leadership is one of those intangible qualities that can't necessarily be taught in a classroom. You have to experience it. You have to try and fail. And it's one of those things that the people who are truly desperate for success in their organizations, whether it be business or otherwise, or whether it be military or otherwise, value individuals who can lead, whether that be direct leadership or whether that be organizational leadership. And I had those opportunities to experience that as a 16-year-old, as a 19-year-old, and as a 22-year-old, all before commissioning in the Army. So I felt comfortable when I stepped into those roles. And then I felt comfortable in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. I felt comfortable on the football field coaching kids in Georgia and Alabama. And I feel comfortable sitting in an academic classroom and sharing with my peers or helping them. And all of that is derived from the experience that I had at those 3 schools.
That's wonderful. I appreciate that very much. What advice would you give to a student or a parent who is looking at military schools? What should they be looking for specifically?
Values. What you should be looking for is what values are being taught to your child. When I say that, and speak to the parent. And then what unique opportunities are being afforded, and how does that translate to success in college and in life thereafterwards? So the questions you should be looking for: what graduates do they have out there in the world doing great things? You know, that's one first indicator. What unique programs exist and what unique opportunities exist? And then the true indicator is going to come during a visit. A young man or woman looking to explore military school for the first time, if you get an opportunity during a visit, pull somebody aside and say, hey, what's the deal here? And I did that during my visit to my military college. You know, I said, hey, what's the deal here? How do you really feel about these things? And try to squeeze the juice out of the experience. And that'll give you a good indicator of what you think the experience is truly going to be like.
Thank you very much for allowing us to ask you these questions and for your candid responses. Is there anything that you would like to add, maybe that we didn't cover, that you would like to tell the audience about military colleges or schools?
The why go with this approach. The why is the path less traveled, and the path less traveled that leads to self-reliance. In this day and age, there are certain qualities, because of ease of access to the internet through social media or otherwise, that prevents these tremendous lessons that were commonplace earlier, whether it be, you know, the 50s through the 80s or otherwise, before the information age really came about. I feel like I am a better man, a better father, a better husband, and a better leader because of the experiences I had in military school. And I don't think I would have had them had I stayed on Long Island and just gone the path that I had. This is military schools make good, mature adults who are focused on purpose and focused on reason and focused on practice. So there is still a unique value to those type of institutions, and there will be better adults for it if they take the chance.
That's great. James, I would like to thank you personally for taking time to help others understand a bit more about the various aspects of military colleges and schools. And I also truly want to thank you and your family for the sacrifices that you have made as an Army officer on behalf of our great nation. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
No worries at all, sir. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
You have been listening to the Military School Podcast, a project of Militaryschooler.com. Find more about these unique schools at Militaryschooler.com and at the Association of Military Colleges and Schools of the United States at AMCSUS.org.